So we've got the performance exceptions report, April 2020. And just a reminder, as Peter Ryan takes the chair again, that this is a performance exceptions report. He is not an expert on all of the individual elements of the report. He just brings the performance exceptions report together. Did you want to say a few words to introduce it, or?
Well, not really, other than to a quick overview. While there's the impacts of COVID-19 lockdown, the numbers are actually not as bad as you might expect. We're probably looking at pretty much the year-end numbers here. There might be a little bump at the end, but we've taken about a 10% hit on levels of service, which, given the nature of the lockdown and the severity of the impacts, is possibly, it's a personal view, lighter than I would have expected. Other than that, the things that are exceptions are largely the same ones that I've been bringing to you for the last few months, and I'm not sure that there's a lot to be gained by lining the ones that you know about. There are some issues around water, there's some issues around transport and roading, a few around parks. By and large, the levels of service are static, other than the few that fell over due to the COVID lockdown. Projects have also predictably taken a bit of a hit as well. So we're not going to hit our targets for levels of service or projects, but that was never going to happen with a 2-month lockdown. They've arguably are in the same boat. We're down, but we're not way down. There's the hits you would expect. So what we've got there's been a slight tweak to the capital reporting, in that we've now we've got the baseline of the project and the forecast, but we've also added a column around the original baseline, so you know where it was when you approved it in the LTP. So you've got the original baseline, the current baseline, and what the officer is forecasting. And you can see that there is some movement there with the projects over time. We've got projects in there that are over full life of the program, not just the current year. Obviously, if they were, you'd be running out of current year, and it would have a very small horizon. Other than that, there's the officer comments and remedial actions, and they are consistent with previous months. The resident survey is now in there, and there's a wide variety of responses to the individual services there on the survey. Some have had some bad news and have taken it on the chin and are responding, but that's obviously not something they're going to fix between now and the 30th of June. I'm happy to field questions on the levels of service, but as the Mayor said, I can't answer every technical detail, but I can answer those that I know about. Otherwise, I can go back to the manager concerned and find out for you. So look, without labouring the point, there has been some movement. It's not as bad as I would have expected, and you're largely looking at what will be your year-end results for levels of service and capital projects.
Thank you. I'd just like to invite the Chief Executive to say a few words as well.
Thank you, Mayor. And I'd like to set that in the context, and thank you, Peter, for describing what you have done in terms of the position we find ourselves in as a council. And the context is being not just that we had to close down and deal with COVID-19 and then also step up as we were going through the levels. So it's just to deal with that in a business as usual situation is a shock to our system, and knowing we all had to go and work from home and do what we did. But the other two elements is the additional significant work that was put on the organisation to redo the annual plan in the timescales that we did, which you have just approved for consultation, and the fact that we are also have been able to keep the LTP on track in the time frames that we have said we would deliver in a normal year. So I just want you to understand the context of the fact that we have seen a drop, but it is not as significant as anybody as we would have expected, and the fact that our staff responded extremely well in this environment and kept their eye on the ball in terms of delivering for residents of Christchurch. Thank you.
Thank you. Are there any questions? Yanni?
Thank you. Just had a question in regards to the recycling. On page 94, the comments don't really give a good reflection, I think, of the current crisis that we find ourselves in. So I just wondered, are we going to get a report to council at some stage about what we're trying to achieve with the whole recycling thing? Because, you know, we've had a lot of negative stuff appearing in terms of behaviour, and I just don't have any sense of where we fit in at a governance level around what we want to do. But the comments in here don't give me a lot of comfort.
Well, I guess the answer to that is that the comments in here will be coming from technical staff, and that the wider answer to your question is probably one that was discussed last night at the EAG around a review of solid waste, and that the changing environment globally around recycling would be part of that review of where we're headed in the long term. That should inform the long-term plan. So this is really officer comments about a KPI for this year, and I agree with you, it doesn't address that bigger strategic question, but there are wheels turning to do that. So the question,
I guess I'm more interested in the immediate, recognising that we've got huge issue of contamination into our yellow bins because of what happened in COVID-19 that we need to kind of address. But I don't know what the process is, because I presume if we don't address it urgently, then this statistic's going to get a lot worse by the end of the year. It'll probably end up red.
I understand. Look, I'll need to go back to Ross and the team and get a technical breakdown of what they're doing in response on that. I agree that
Can I perhaps help there, because they are doing a lot of work there, and we will be having a briefing fairly soon. We've got the waste minimisation plan that's proceeding. They're also picking up the Gold Star award as well, again, and that was really successful. So you're right, Yanni, bad habits were created. It doesn't mean those habits were not there pre-COVID, by the way. They've just exacerbated. But it's the education program is the way they're going to go first. And then, as you know, there could well be a time where people's bins will not be picked up if they don't change their behaviour. But that's the program at the moment.
But do we get a chance at a governance level to actually, if we're going to start putting in punitive things to people because of contamination, like are we going to pass any or have any consideration of the policies or the kind of efforts that we're going to make? That's what I'm not clear about. Because we just seem to be hearing about what's happening through either Newsline or the media, and that's kind of just going on week by week by week. New things are being introduced, and the behaviour's not improving.
Well, you can say that it's not improving. It's early days, and I think they're going to be leafleting people's bins and talking to them about. Some people just don't know. Some people don't care. And some people make mistakes, so there's different reasons for these things happening. But staff are definitely
And the
concerned
rules
about
have
it.
changed around the plastics, you know,
Yeah.
what you can put in terms of the numbers, you know, see, I'm doing this,
2, 5,
1, 3 and 5?
I think it's been
1,
more
2,
the issue of
5.
putting using the yellow bin as a red bin, and people are still doing that. And the latest stuff from Radio New Zealand was pretty damning on what was going on. So
And it's quite amazing that they are still doing that when it's had so much coverage lately.
Yeah.
So is it because they don't care, or they don't realise it actually costs them money?
But I don't want to use a performance exceptions report to have a debate. I actually want a proper report on the issue, and
Yeah.
we have
Can we
had
do that
lots of discussions. We've met with Eco Central, we've met with our own staff, and we've also started meeting with other companies. And Pauline, this is your space as the chair of the committee, and you've been initiating meetings both internally and externally to try and get a handle around what the future is, because the future is not what the situation is now. It can't be, because what we have now isn't good enough.
And it's moving.
Yeah.
cool.
So the performance exception is always going to
No,
be
I
below
get
par
that, but
while
when
it's
you-
in this situation.
When you read like remedial action or comments, and for solid waste, which is one where we amber, but I think we're going to.
This is in retrospect, Yanni.
I get that, but the comments, like remedial, there's no remedial action associated to it, and there's no reference to what's actually going to be done. So most of the others, if you scroll through, you'll see that there's kind of remedial action and there's things that are going to be done, and that's all I was really trying
Yanni,
to understand.
What month is this report to? What's the end point?
30th of May.
Right.
So I think, Yanni, you have a legitimate point in terms of the remedial action. And it's important that you understand not just what the history is in these reports, but what the continuing action or new action is going to be prevented to prevent it from remaining the same. So we will take that
Great,
back.
thank you.
But fundamentally, there is a two-way result here that we need to get to, and this will not show you everything that is being done through different routes. And you have been briefed as a set of members on the waste minimisation plan. You have been fully briefed at several occasions on the eco-central position, and you know that in fact, you have approved the service review only very recently, and we know the work that we're moving on in terms of what needs to be done for the longer term. But I take your
It's
point,
the
and I'll
immediate
take that
stuff.
back.
Thank you. And the only other question I had was in regards to just on page 96 at the top, respond to customer service requests within appropriate timeframes. And I really appreciate the honesty that's actually in this report, because it does paint kind of a picture of why things don't happen straight away when people ring the call centre or log it, SnapSend Solve or CSR. But there's heaps of stuff in there, but just at a very high level, is there kind of a key date that we're working towards where that system will be more refined to more accurately explain to people what's happened to their complaint? And I know Councillor Templeton and I have raised the issue of when you log a request, you often get an email back saying, good news, your job's been completed or put in the system, and you don't get told actually, it's going to be put into the program and looked at in a few months, or it's actually being done straight away. It's quite confusing.
So we have changed the job completed piece. We've taken that back. Apparently that's been said for many years. We have changed that, as I understand it, or are changing it. So we've heard that. Peter, I think you can do with the other parts, please.
Look, I don't know the answer to some of your question. I'll need to speak to Sarah and find out in terms of the date process, what she's got for that, and come back to you.
Yeah. Okay. Cool. Thank you.
Sorry, I do need to add that the bulk of the information in here is actually from end of April. So at that time, in terms of the recycling commentary, the staff wouldn't have known the future. They would not know how long the lockdown was going to go, when they were going to resume the service, and therefore they wouldn't really be able to comment on what they're going to do. So it's a product of a point in time. And that point in time is actually, in the current environment, a hell of a long time ago.
And we've done a hell of a lot since.
All right. So do I have somebody who can move the resolution? Mike Davidson, seconded Andrew Turner. I'll put that motion. All those in favour say aye. Aye. Those opposed say no. That's carried. Thank you, Peter. I know that you've got tons on your plate at the moment with the LTP still driving along in the background, so much appreciated. Thank you.